I too welcome the opportunity to speak on this bill this evening. And as of today in East Cork, the average rent, I suppose, on a two-bedroom house is €1,000, and that's actually the average. You know, some, as Deputy O'Leary said, are higher than that. A three-bedroom house is over €1,200 a month, and a one-bedroom apartment is ironically €750 a month. Now, out of those properties, just today in East Cork, in my own area, that's a total of 20 properties that are available for rent. What's the situation when obviously when stuff is scarce and the demand is high, it gets more expensive. But the real knock-on effect of that, and the social knock-on effect of that, is young families, struggling families, are under unbelievable and immense mental pressure, as well as, you know, financial pressure to try and meet the demands, to try and get a job that's sustainable enough to actually pay rent. But on top of that, and I mentioned it with you, Minister, last year on the rent pressure zones. I think Cove is the only one in my area in East Cork that's actually a rent pressure zone. The rest isn't. And I mentioned about the stipulation, and one of the stipulations was that the average yearly rent, the national average, that we would have to hit that bar to even negotiate or have a conversation about rezoning more pressure zones. Now, the problem with that is, even as of today, the national average is €1,122 a month. So we have a scenario where in East Cork that the national average is going up and the rents are going up, but the rent is not catching up with the national average. So you have the dog chasing the tail. So I do seriously think that the rent pressure zone legislation has to be looked at, and certainly has to be, urgently reviewed on that. I'm surprised. I do welcome the fact that Fianna Fáil are supporting this bill, but I'm surprised that they didn't demand this actually in the confidence and supply agreement. But look, that's another story. Also, the rent pressure zones, that's due to expire in the end of 2019. So, I mean, is there another plan, or is there a plan in place to see what's going to happen after that? Do we have anything that we can say to our tenants when we go back to our constituency? Because, they're in a very precarious situation. And to be honest, a lot of these people are living day to day because they don't know when they'll get the letter in the door to say, I have a family member coming back, I need you to move out, and tough luck. And it has happened many a time. The other side of it is the affordable housing seems to be non-existent, so we're in a real crux trying to address that issue as well, because, as I said, you have certain people and families on a certain threshold that won't qualify for mortgage, but are just over the threshold to qualify for social housing. HAP was mentioned a while ago. HAP can be very, very difficult, because if you're looking at landlords, and not all landlords, but when you're looking at landlords, it's very hard to say, right, I have a one-bedroom apartment, and if I'm legit here and I register my property, the local authority, will supplement that. We would just say what I called a while ago was €750. But the demand is so high for these properties that they could get €1,000, €1,200 a month, cash. So there has to be some way of looking at how you regulate that. And as I said, all landlords, and it's not bash the landlord here tonight, many people have spoken about it tonight, there are certainly some absolutely fabulous landlords, and there is also fabulous tenants. But as always, there's always the bad. There's always a few bad apples, no matter where you go. I think this bill certainly does strengthen, I think, rights of both, because, it's about having a security, I suppose something similar to a security of tenure, that when a tenant goes into a property, that they know what they're actually paying for is quality. It's safe, it's dry. Many of the constituents come to my office, some of the properties are absolutely deplorable, absolutely destroyed in mould. And I've had some cases where it took nearly, 2.5 years to fight one case. And some of these were actually in, the alternative agencies, let's not name any of them here tonight, but you know who I'm talking about, that actually work in conjunction with the local authorities. Some of their properties are absolutely deplorable and totally substandard. So I think strengthening the law on this, and this goes into the voluntary housing sector, that's what I'm talking about as well, because there is a lot of cases, and I have no problem, Minister, giving you the information on it, because it's actually medically unfit, some of these properties, and because they're being subletted to management agencies. The big boys have been forgotten about. They're probably been not informed or misinformed about the situation, but it's the tenant, again, is living and suffering. On top of that, they're living there in fear because they do not want to complain. Because, again, it's like the gravy train. The minute you fall out that door, there could be 40 more people coming in behind you to fill the same spot. So it's a dog-eat-dog. I suppose the real social, mental impact of what's happening within the property sector at the moment has to be told and recognised as well. And unfortunately, some people in mortgage distress who genuinely try to pay their bills and pay their mortgages and stuff are not with us anymore. And that's a real reality in life as well. But we also have a generation now, because we have zero-hour contracts, so there's no security, you can't get a loan, the thresholds are too low, you're over a bit this way. They just cannot access funding to even get into the property ladder. So you now have young families that have very young children, and they're kind of working between pillar to post between his parents' house tonight to stay in and her parents' house tomorrow night to stay in. And it starts to become a battle between the kids. Do they sleep with mum tonight or do they sleep with dad tonight? That's actually happening today because, Minister, people cannot genuinely even get suitable accommodation. I can tell you stories of people, young families, last winter, and you know how bad it was last winter we had with the snow, living in a mobile home, not even heating in it. But they had nowhere else to go. They had squatted, but had to get out of that property because they had nowhere else to go. These are the realities of what's happening within the housing market today. And as I said, it is very welcome, and the RTB, getting more powers. It has to be, but I think local authority should have more powers, and there should be more, I suppose, investment in inspectors and so on and so forth. And we know as well that local authorities do a fabulous job. The staff inside are under unbelievable pressure. But it's very difficult to shovel snow while it's still snowing. And we do work very well with the local authority and one-to-one and whatever. And they're real genuine people, but they're so stressed and so restrained because they don't have the capabilities or the properties to actually hand out to these constituents. Another one I suppose I would want to mention is the silent homeless, I suppose, that people don't talk about. And this, I suppose, is another instance of, I suppose, the downturn and the crash and so on and so forth. But it's the fact that many families had good jobs, did their best, mortgaged their house, reared their children, actually put them to college. But those children have now immigrated. They're working, that's fine. But between the stresses and the strains of the crash, the mortgage failing, the marriage breaking up, the banks coming in and taking the properties off what's left of a family, which are the parents. So you now have them couch surfing in their own parents' homes. And they're too embarrassed to come out and even admit that that's the situation. I had one particular case a number of years ago, and I thought it was absolutely disgusting, where this very similar situation happened to the family, but that family could not even come back into the same estate to visit their next door neighbours because there was a barring order of 200 metres from their old family home. And the mother told me, she said that the neighbour from next door, he was probably 6 at the time, when she went to visit from afar, that young fellow was inside kicking the for sale sign down. These are realities. I suppose this bill as well, it's all great to be talking about ideas, but I mean, it's solutions realistically is what we're looking for. And I mean, even Sinn Féin and herself have mentioned, and let's be realistic, a 3-year rent freeze, excuse me. It's not a bad idea. It gives us all time to come up with plans. And again, I reiterate, this 3-year rent freeze is not anti-landlord or pro-tenant. It's about giving us time to get things right. There was a couple of other ones that I suppose were mentioned in it. Refundable rent relief for renters. Yes, it's a good idea. I mean, we must assist everybody here. And certainly, I suppose, the rollout of cost rental models across the whole state, that's not rocket science. And I have another one that's been mentioned to me as well. I mean, we have to look at certain ways of speeding up the planning permission. We certainly have to look at ways of assisting local councils in every single way we possibly can. And that even includes the municipal district councils. And even before the town councils were disbanded, you had the local knowledge, you had the local touch, you had the local support, and you had your little lad that went around every single day of the week checking on the properties that the town council had, and if there was an issue, was it addressed? I think we have to go back, to the old days. Let's go back to what they did in the 70s when there was nothing here, but we still built houses that people could afford, and we mustn't forget, while we talk of houses and properties, people want to cherish it as a home. And a home is something very different to a house. A home is where memories are made, memories are formed, where there's a sense of security, there's a sense of warmth, and there's an actual genuine knock-on effect of harmony, respect in society. It's about being proud of who you are. And also, you respect your neighbours, and it's just a knock-on effect that makes society way more social. And when you have a more social society, everybody works together. And I think we've lost that in Ireland. It's all about what you have and what you can get. And once we're okay, don't worry about them. And that has to stop. So I'll finish in that, Cathaoirleach, but I have to say, I do welcome this bill. I do suspect, and there will be amendments to it, but certainly anything where we can assist both tenants, both landlords, anything we can do to assist local authorities to try and get more social and affordable homes, and I mean homes, in this country has to be welcomed. Thank you very much, Deputy.